Today we will be discussing the topic of anonymous communication with a focus on the darknet. I'd like to begin by first defining what the darknet is. The darknet is a private network where connections are made using non-standard protocols. There are various darknets across the internet, and the collection of all these darknets forms a portion of the deep web. Now, the deep web, also known as the hidden web, is the portion of the World Wide Web that cannot be found or discovered through standard search engines. Now, darknets are different from your regular peer-to-peer networks because sharing is anonymous, meaning that IP addresses are not publicly shared or revealed. There are various uses for the darknet, the most common being that it is a marketplace for illegal firearms and recreational drugs and substances. It can also be a marketplace for stolen merchandise, such as credit cards. Two reasons that are a little less common are that it can serve as a platform for sharing copyrighted media files, and it can also serve as a common space for those that oppose the current political regime of their government to have a place to communicate. I will now turn it over to my partner, who will provide a more technical overview of the process required in darknet communications.
For a technical look at how darknets work, let's take a look at why they're required. As an example, we have Alice, and she wants to speak to her friend Bob. So she starts a link between them and sends across some data, in this case just the word hello. A problem arises, however, when Eve here listens in on their communication. She can see whatever Alice sends to Bob. This is clearly a problem when sensitive data such as passwords are sent over the link. A common way to resolve this issue is to use encryption. For example, Tor uses the RSA 1024 protocol, which would encrypt our word hello into this gobbledygook right here. RSA uses a public key and a private key to accomplish this. A public key is like a lock that can encrypt any information so that it can only be read by someone who has the private key. This is a very mathematically secure protocol that would take millenniums to brute force. Now, if we look back at our example over here, even if Alice encrypts her communication to Bob, if Eve is listening in on their link, she can see that Alice has been talking to Bob, and sometimes that can be just as dangerous as seeing the information that Alice sends to Bob. For example, if someone was living in a politically dissident regime and they wanted to speak to an American newspaper, they clearly wouldn't want that to be public knowledge. So let's take a look at how Tor works. Tor consists of a network of nodes that data is bounced around. We will take a look at a packet sent through the network to see exactly how the protocol operates. First, Alice talks to a directory server to get a list of nodes that are available to her. Then she selects a few nodes to bounce the data between. In her example, these will be nodes 2, 4, and 10. The data will be bounced between these nodes before it gets to Bob. Each of these nodes has a private key, so that data can be encrypted in such a way that only they can access it. Let's start with the exit node, node 10. Two important pieces of information in the Tor protocol are where to send the data and what data to send. In this case, node 10 knows to send the data to Bob, and the data in this case is hello. We encrypt this data with the public key for node 10, so that no one else can read it. Now we move on to node 2. We take the encrypted data and put it in the data field for node 2. Node 2 knows to send the data to node 10, but it cannot access any of the data within it. We in turn encrypt this data with the public key for node 2 and move on to node 4. The same kind of operation takes place, except node 4 sends the data to node 2, and we encrypt this data with the public key for node 4. Now our packet is complete, and we can start sending it through the network. We are now ready to send our packet through the network. Alice sends the packet to node 4. Node 4 decrypts it and finds that it has to send the data to node 2. Node 2 receives the packet, decrypts it, and finds that it has to send the data to Node 10. Node 10 receives this piece of data and decrypts it, and finds that it has to send the data to Bob. The message is sent to Bob, and he finally gets Alice's message. This is a very roundabout way of communicating the data. However, it helps keep Alice anonymous, since Node 4 has no idea whether Alice is just another node on the network, and Node 10 has no idea whether Bob is just another node at the network which it is sending data to. If we look at the link between Node 10 and Bob, we can see that this link is still insecure, and anyone who is listening in can see that someone sent hello to Bob. In order to protect against this, we must use a transport layer security protocol, such as SSL, so that anyone listening in that link will still see an encrypted message. A common way to do this with Tor is to tunnel through a VPN before sending your data.
For an added layer of security, it is beneficial to combine the use of Tor with the use of a virtual private network. Now, what a virtual private network does is that it enables a computer to both send and receive data as if over a shared or public network, as if it were connected to the private network. It essentially extends a private network across a public network, such as the internet. Now, this is created by establishing a virtual point-to-point connection through virtual tunneling protocols or encryption. The advantage of this is that unauthorized users cannot access the virtual private network because of the requirement of sender authentication. The virtual private network can also detect whether there have been instances of transmitted messages being tampered with. I'd like to now take a moment to talk about where the future of the Darknet is headed. Even though there are various technologies such as firewalls and intrusion detection and antivirus systems, the threat volume is rising, and attacks, information security attacks, are becoming more elusive. And ironically enough, the approach to mitigating security issues may be in the use of the Darknet. For example, mid-sized to large companies may benefit from implementing their own private Darknet in their companies. This is because the greater the number of users in a company, the more devices administrators have to manage. Therefore, the greater the need is for safer and more reliable network analysis. Now, with a private Darknet, companies can quickly differentiate between legitimate and malicious traffic on their networks. In another vein, the American public is becoming increasingly concerned for their anonymity and the security of their information due to recent events such as the NSA scandal or government surveillance disclosures of recent years. For these reasons, we expect there to be an increase in the usage of these types of services in the future.
That was our presentation on Darknets. Thank you for listening. If you would like to find out more information, you can follow these references listed here.